Hey, welcome everybody to the May 31st meeting of Syracuse Solidarity Coalition in Municipal Onondaga County. We try really hard to give our presenters their full 45 minutes and our committees their full hour at the end. So we got to move quickly through a number of announcements in the next 13 minutes. So first of all, on July 12th, we just got a reservation for the Thornton Park Pavilion. It will be our summer picnic if it doesn't rain this time. So watch for more information on that. Announcement from Dick Hornwood. Dick?
This will be quick because you should all have a sheet of paper that's going to cover what I'm going to say. But basically, a year ago, the Roman Catholic Diocese said that nobody can meet in their buildings without insurance. So we got coverage for this building in our meetings. It was $870 a year. And it also covered us for anything else, which included 3 events, 3 rallies, and any other appearance or project that we had that required permits. Then May 5th came, our policy expired, and it was not renewed. So I went to our agent, who happens to handle the insurance for the Peace Council. He went to a broker who put our insurance request out to over 50 insurance companies. I also got people referring insurance agencies in Syracuse and Virginia. I contacted 4 agencies, 3 local, 1 in Virginia. I contacted all of them. I did not even get an acknowledgement of my existence from any of the local insurance agencies. I sent them emails, I left voice messages, I got crickets. The one in Virginia said, no problem, I'll get you insurance. Nothing happened. I finally called him and I said, what's going on? And he says, I can't get you insurance. It's because you said you do rallies and I can't get an insurance policy to cover rallies. And so then at the last minute, the local agent said, I got you a policy. And I said, great, it's on premises. It covers our meetings. Period. It does not cover anything outside of this building that we do. So the only thing that we got is the ability to have meetings here for the next 12 months. And the premium went from $870 to $3,200. That's what that sheet of paper is about. So we need to cover, yes.
Have you asked the diocese for an exception to policy?
We have not asked the diocese for an exception to the policy.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Oh, Peter did.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I think you were told
Actually,
take it or leave it or something or other like that.
We asked the church whether there's any flexibility, and they said, no, we're kind of already on a watch list from the diocese just for being who we are. So there won't be exceptions.
Okay, real quickly, you have a hand up.
Yeah, have you contacted the people here from the NYCLU about the established legal precedent that a group that is low income cannot be prohibited from protesting because of an exorbitant insurance requirement? I would urge you to check on that legal precedent with the experts from the NYCLU, either those here or those in the New York City office.
Okay, although I don't see a lot of low-income faces in this room.
But the organization does not have a whole lot of income, does it?
No.
That's exactly what I'm getting to.
Yeah, we just got a bill for 3/4 of our annual revenue. That's what this is about. Yes and yes.
Okay, when do I write a check to you?
Anytime.
Okay.
Well, what's going to happen is I have to get the money to the agent within a day or 2. So
Okay.
we have the funds barely to cover the insurance, so we'll be able to write that check. But after that, we will be hurting. So we can cover the insurance as of today, but maybe not in a week or 2. So we're okay for now. You were next.
Has anybody contacted the media to see if we can shine a light on this story? Because it sounds like it's not just us.
Oh, we know that it's not just us. We actually know from communication with Indivisible that it's nationwide. This is not local. And I don't want to take any more time, but someone talked about the media. I was contacted by an independent muckraking reporter who was interested in the story, who told me that she worked with some progressive groups in Albany and they couldn't get insurance either. So this is not us. This is the climate we're in.
Do we?
Yes.
Is this unique to the Catholic diocese
No.
or the,
Well,
no insurance, not to.
so there's two questions there. There's getting insurance, period, and then there's the Catholic diocese. The issue about getting insurance, period, is the problem. We can't get coverage, general liability coverage, period, except that 1 out of 50 plus insurance companies was willing to give us insurance for meeting in this room. The other 49 plus wouldn't give us insurance for anything. Yes, back there.
Is this gonna prevent us from being able to do like a no fees for, is this like their version of trying to basically shut us up?
No, here's what you need to know about no kinks. We did not need insurance to do no kinks. One, 2, or 3. Well, actually, no kinks 1 was in a park. We needed insurance. No kinks 3 was on public property. However, because we were using the parking lots at the shopping town, the sheriff's department and the DeWitt Police Department requested an insurance certificate, but that was completely separate from the actual rally. We did not need insurance to rally. We got to stop. So that's it. So help us out. If we can cover this, we'll be okay.
I have 2 announcements. One, I wanted to give you a brief update on some items that are happening at the Onondaga County Legislature. Our next session is this Tuesday, June 2nd at 1 p.m. Hopefully you've seen in the news, but Democrats are proposing local laws that if they pass and the county executive signs them, they would go to the voters in November to vote on. These would include term limits for the county executive, changing vacancy appointments from the county executive to the legislature, and also creating a process for citizens to draw fair maps. To get these on the ballot this year, it will take a lot of support. So if you can make a public comment at our meeting or email us at legislature@onondaga.gov, your thoughts would be really helpful. Also, I wanted to let you know that Republicans on the legislature are proposing a local law that would prohibit demonstrating at places of religious worship within 35 feet of an entrance. This same law was passed in Nassau County, and the NYCLU is suing them to stop that law. They say that it potentially could infringe on your First Amendment rights. But that is on our agenda on Tuesday. So again, if you have thoughts on that, you can come to our meeting or email us again at legislature@onondaga.gov. The second announcement, CMY Solidarity and Indivisible Onondaga County we're having a candidate forum next Sunday from 3 to 5 right here. And you get to hear from the Democratic candidates running for City Common Council in Onondaga County Legislature. This will be recorded and shared as well after that forum. So I look forward to hearing from all of these candidates, and I love how many people are stepping up to run for office. Thank you.
Because that meeting next week, our June meeting, and it's going to be a full 2-hour session with the candidates, committee chairs, and committee members. We will be not having breakout sessions at our June meeting. And we're going to have a picnic for our July meeting. So committee breakout sessions will not be happening for a while. So committee chairs might want to think about Zoom meetings to get their committees together. You might want to get some signatures today for other people that would like to be added to your committee mailing list. And if you need help with that, let us know. If you need help setting up a Zoom meeting, let us know. Elaine has volunteered to be the contact person for that, along with everything else she does. Okay, real quick, speaking of candidates and elections, if you are Mo, pay attention. If you are in the room and you are running for something, just say your name and the position you're running for. Shout it out. I see one. Name and what position you're running for.
Hi, my name is Maurice Brown. I'm running for New York State Assembly in 129.
Any other candidates in the room? That's it. Okay, Chris, you're up.
This will be very short. I asked Peter if anybody was making an announcement to thank the coordinating committee for receiving the Harriet Tubman Award from the NAACP. And he said, oh, I was going to say something. I said, that's not the way it's supposed to be. Somebody has to say how grand you are. So I wanted to thank all the coordinating committee individually. And I start with the ones I know best because I used to be on the coordinating committee, and then I'll come to the ones I know least. Peter and Dick. Dick, well, you know, put your hand up. Okay. And Brent, who just walked into the room, and Elaine. You know, the problem with pointing out Elaine is that she's moving so fast you can't find her. And then Mark. And Judy is not here today, unfortunately, but Judy is also a part of this crew. And finally, our wizard of the Tuesday newsletter, Craig. And so, let me remind you, I'm not going to harp on anybody. Please read your Tuesday newsletter. You would have known this already. Thank you.
I just want to say, the award was not given to the coordinating committee. The award was given to CNY Solidarity. We just managed to place it to you folks out here who are doing the work.
I'm gonna tell you what, in case you missed my universe-wide appearance on television last week on Red Street on Channel 9. I'm gonna tell you what I said there. Several years ago, coordinating committee looked around the room and said, this is an awfully white crowd in this room, which was obvious to everybody. So we talked to a couple of friends that we've been working with and said, what can we do? We've obviously not been successful in creating a space that's comfortable for people of color to show up and participate. And over a period of about 3 months, we had several conversations, and they told us 3 things. Number one, you have to confront and understand your own right privilege, because you don't get it, and you need to work on that, and it takes a while. Number 2, you have to reach out to organizations that are led by and advocating for people of color and show up. Number 3, you have to realize that your goals and their goals will not always be the same. Show up anyway. So we've done a lot of work trying to do those things over the last several years, and it was really, really astonishing to know that someone wanted to recognize us for it. So thank you. One more quick thing. Rochester. Galen is going to say a word. A couple folks from Rochester came to visit a couple months ago, and they're back today.
First of all, thanks to Peter for having us here. And I just wanted to share one thing. Last time we came here, we talked about partnering Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse regions, because there's coalitions in all 3 on projects that make sense and might benefit everybody. And I'm just going to take a quick overview on the first project we're getting off the ground, but I think it's worth hearing about, and it's going to probably be a million details you'd ask me about. But there's visibility brigades in Syracuse, in Rochester, and in Buffalo. They're all good. They've all done actions for a long time now. We've partnered and are putting together an event that's going to span the 180 miles of Buffalo to Syracuse on one day this summer to get started with the messaging about the midterm elections. We feel that every group I've ever talked to feels that whatever their agenda is, it'll be improved if the Republicans lose the House or the Senate in the midterms, and it's going to be much harder if they don't. So we want to get the messaging out to as many people as possible, and we would love to have an event that we can publicize that partner all these regions together for one big benefit. We've got Chad here. Is Chad in the room? Okay, well, he told me he was gonna be here.
He's running late.
He's running late, so. But at any rate, Chad's the guy at Syracuse. We've got counterparts in Rochester. We've got one in the city of Buffalo. Because Buffalo's so big, we got another leader in the South towns. So we got a big opportunity here. I welcome everybody being aware of it. It's gonna be cool. We've been going out to the small rural groups, recruiting them to own a bridge. So if we get enough people, and I haven't had anybody say no yet, it's gonna take bridges along the way. We're gonna do as smart as we can. We're applying for a big grant from Inducible. We're gonna see what happens, but I'm very excited about it. I just hope we all, when we launch this first one, are gonna feel really like we accomplished something big that we haven't done before because we haven't all worked together. Thank you.
Okay, one last announcement, two last announcements. Let's go to Wendy first.
Wendy Yellowstone from Peace Council, and you may or may not know that Beyond War and Militarism has been a breakout meeting or a committee of the coalition for some time, but we haven't had breakout meetings here in a while. And so hopefully you're getting hot about what's happening with all our foreign policy. And if you're not affiliated with a committee yet, you might want to join us today to talk about it. Thank you.
So they'll be having a breakout session, and we know we haven't paid enough attention to the damage our country is doing to the rest of the world. And our association with the Peace Council and Beyond War and Militarism is a key part of that. So please keep that in mind. My friend Barry Gawanter is going to speak about a current crisis for the Syracuse Citizen Review Board.
Hi there, I'm Barry Gawanter. I'm not affiliated with any organization right now. I'm just an independent advocate. One of the things I'm focusing on is the citizen, which should be called Civilian Review Board. If you don't know what it is, come talk to me or talk to Peter, because he's one of my partners in fighting to preserve the CRB and make sure it has what it needs to function. You may have seen this in the newsletter. Next Tuesday at 5:30, there's going to be a regular business meeting of the CRB board. We're asking the public to show up and speak in public comment. Last month, the City Council and the CRB leadership and the executive branch of this city got together and agreed to pause the investigative and recommendation powers of the CRB. This was based on the city attorney called the Corporation Counsel's interpretation of an appellate court, New York State appellate court decision involving a very different police entity in Rochester. The decision didn't mention anything but the police entity in Rochester. Said nothing about any other police accountability entity anywhere else. And yet the city attorney said the decision means that we need to pause the CRB and amend the legislation to take away its powers. Hell no. The perception in the mayor's office and the city council is that there's been no public outcry. People don't care. Well, on June 3rd, Peter and I went to a public meeting with the mayor and the police chief and challenged that and asked the mayor not to act, asked that she ask the council not to act to amend the law, and asked the mayor to restore the powers of the CRB. She came back and said, well, I only have one legal opinion, the one from my corporation counsel. I don't have any other legal opinion. The NYCLU has now spoken, and spoken strongly. I have 4 copies of this. Guys, is it on the website yet?
We'll check.
Okay, it will be on the website if it's not already. And the NYCLU is crystal clear. That decision had nothing to do with the Syracuse CRB, and it is abominable to preemptively strip away the core powers of our CRB. So the NYCLU has spoken, but the CRB remains silent. They've said nothing. So we're asking you to show up at 5:30. You'll have to sit through a business meeting. It's usually not long. But then there's a public comment period. You've got about 3 minutes, maybe 5 if you push it. Please get there and speak up. Here's what I'd like you to say. 1, how important it is that we have an independent body that reviews complaints about police conduct. 2, do not bow down to the opinion of the city attorney that is not based in constitutional analysis or facts of the decision, and only acts to prevent the city from possibly facing a lawsuit. And number 3, ask the CRB to speak up for its own behalf and ask for public support so that the representatives of the communities most likely to be affected by police action feel that they have a reason to organize and push for the preservation of the CRB. I ask you to join us.
I want to apologize to our presenters. We're 10 minutes late. We're going to split the difference, so we will go from now till 4:05, following which they will have a breakout section right here for question and answers. So I'm going to turn it right over, let them introduce themselves. We are really happy to see some people that we've been working with for several years on a number of issues, including the CRB, police reform, 81 the community grid, and the lead problem in Syracuse. We're going to talk about lead. So,
my name is Liz Marie Montemayor Robles. For those who don't know me, I am the Central New York organizer for the New York Civil Liberties Union in our office here based in Syracuse. Closest to me is Vanessa Owens Chaplin, who is a civil rights attorney and movement leader dedicated to advancing racial, environmental, and economic justice. She serves as director of the Racial Justice Center at the New York Civil Liberties Union, where she leads statewide litigation, policy advocacy, and community-driven campaigns addressing systemic racism and social inequities embedded in New York's legal and governmental systems. And then to my furthest is Oceana Fair, a passionate civic leader and a lifelong resident of Syracuse's South Side. She's chair of Families for Lead Freedom Now. She leads a grassroots coalition of families directly impacted by childhood lead poisoning, advocating for justice, accountability, and systemic change. Because Fair serves on several boards and committees, including the Governor's Lead Advisory Council, the Greater Syracuse's Land Bank Board, and the ID1's Big Table Occupational and Environmental Health and Safety Committee. Her leadership is marked by compassion, tenacity, and a deep-rooted dedication to community health and equity. Before I let them start, I just want to make a quick announcement that I will be handing out 2 flyers. The first is a 2-pager of the EPA's report when we collaborated with them in 2025. So this is going to give you a quick summary of the lead crisis, and the second is going to be circulated by Chris and Maureen, 2 of our lovely volunteers and canvassers. It is a petition that you can sign asking the city to declare a state of emergency, which would help garner public awareness and public education. And secondly, a citywide point use of filters. All right, take it away, Oceana.
Hi, thank you for having me back. I know some of the faces in the room, some of you are new, but I'm glad to see so many people here. So as many of you know, back in 2024, Syracuse failed its lead water test. And our mayor at the time just said it was an outlier. But I have a 7-year-old in my home who was directly affected by that lead and water crisis because previously, prior to her being born, my house was completely remediated for lead. Our contractor came back out and checked our structure. We did not have a breach in that remediation. And the only way she was coming into contact with lead in my home was directly through my lead service line. So clean water in New York State is not a privilege, it is our right, and it is in our state constitution. So when lead keeps coming back, we've talked about my story. I was given the all clear from both Onondaga County Health and the city of Syracuse saying that my home was free of all lead. When my granddaughter was born in 2019, we could not figure out on her 1- and 2-year-old test where she was coming into contact with lead. We had our house rechecked. We didn't have any breaches. And so we proceeded with what we know best, which was to make sure she had a healthy diet and to make sure we were staying on top of her education. So the city failed me, the county failed me. They don't even tell you when they do your home inspection that you have a lead service line. So no one warned me that this thing was still sitting in my basement and that we had it there. A lot of people ask me why I do this work. This is my brother and my grandchildren. This is what gets me up, and this is why I do this work every single day. Other than myself, at some point, every member in this picture has been affected by lead. So the beautiful lie, the city of Syracuse will tell you how pristine the water is in Skinny Atlas Lake. So pristine that they get a waiver and that water is not filtered as it comes into the city to us. At least that's what they tell us. But I know we all watch the news and hear about the algae blooms every year and all of the other things that go on. However, it's not the water in the lake we're worried about. So when the water gets to your house and it's coming through this pipe directly into your home. And our water commissioner has talked about orthophosphate. Orthophosphate is not a cure-all. It takes very specific science and balance daily to make sure that we are putting into our water in the right amounts. And I can tell you 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, when the contractor pulled my line up out of the ground finally, he said it was one of the worst service lines he's ever seen. And because there were so many jagged edges in it, the orthophosphate was doing my home absolutely no good. So we need to understand how the lead gets to us. It's not about the source that it comes from, although in Flint it was that, but here in Syracuse, it's not the source. So we know how pristine Skinny Atlas Lake is. It's not the actual big water mains, because those are much bigger and are made out of a different material. Although they have cracks all the time. If anybody has seen our water department, they literally play whack-a-mole all winter long with water main breaks, which then also introduces other contaminants into our water. But then you get this lead service line that comes directly into your house. And the city of Syracuse was one of the municipalities back when our homes were being built. You could not connect to the water main unless you used a lead service line. So we have 14,000 plus lead service lines, probably more closer to 23,000 service lines in the city. And then of course our families cook, drink, bathe in that water that comes into our sink daily. You can't smell it, you can't see it, and you can't taste it. You have no idea that it's there. In 2024, the mayor's response was to blame 2 employees on improper water collection, to say that we were an outlier, to give us a promise on how fast they were going to replace those service lines, only to come back to a committee hearing this year and tell us that they had replaced less than half of what they promised us. And they failed to declare a state of emergency, no matter how much we pled with them, gave them the information, and explained how this could free up funds from the New York State Water Fund to help us replace these service lines faster. We know this can be done because the city of Newark, who has twice as many, or had twice as many lead service lines that we did at the time, replaced theirs in 3 years. So there are cities that have gone before us that we can model after, that we can take the knowledge from them and implement it here. So far, we've not replaced the amount of service lines that we promised. We got 800 of the 3,000 we were promised. We still do not have a comprehensive plan from the city of Syracuse on how they plan to replace the rest of our water service lines. And we have a legal petition that's going around that Liz Marie is passing somewhere to ask the city to give us that plan. We know there's a better process. I'm just one little grandma who was quite angry with what was going on with my family, but because I've made a lot of noise, I have managed to assemble 3 legal teams to help us with this fight. So we have NYCLU who's here today that's been working on this with us. Earth Justice, who has helped us with this process, and NRDC, the Natural Resource Defense Council, who have all brought their expertise to the table to help us solve this issue. We have been pushing for a community education and outreach proposal. We've explained to the city why that needs to happen and partnering with a group like ours, where we are sending out trusted messengers right now to doors, to knock on doors, to explain why they need their lead service lines done, to make sure we get that consent signed so that we can get into the home to get it done, to make sure that we're leaving a filter behind, because after your lead service line is replaced, your water then needs to be filtered for the next 6 months because we've cut into your line. And there could be fine shards of lead that you're not going to be able to see with the naked eye. Now, you would think that when the city got to my street, after all the noise I've made, and on national news about this problem, made all this ruckus, that I would have been on the top of the list to get my lead service line replaced. Well, the day they came to Cannon Street, my address was not even on the list. They had not marked my lines. The contractor was like, oh, we know you. You're the reason we have so much work. But I was not on their list. They returned to my home 2 weeks later, at which time I was at a national lead conference in New Orleans, so I was not home at the time, to replace my lead service lines. And then they failed to leave my family a filter, which is required. Now, obviously, I know about lead and we're filtering our water. However, if that's what you did at my home, what are you doing at the other homes? Because if you didn't follow the protocol, and you didn't leave my family the instruction pamphlet, the filter, and explain to my adult child who was home what she needed to do next. As a matter of fact, when they left my house, we still have brown water coming from. So they had not flushed properly. Hence the reason we need a community education and outreach proposal, so that people who are trusted in the community are getting those doors open. We're explaining to families why it needs to happen. And we're making sure that all the proper instructions are left and they have someone they can call once we leave their house. They're also prepared. The day they came to replace that line while I was out of town, they notified my daughter that morning. By the way, we're here to replace your lead service line today. So that meant that she didn't go to work that day. She stayed home. I don't know about you, but a lot of families in my neighborhood cannot call off of work that easily because the city showed up at the door that day. We need to have some type of planning. We need to let communities know when we're going to be in their neighborhoods so that they can plan properly and make sure that there's someone there. We pretty much talked about this, how we will canvas, the education. We also need to identify those homes. My home was not on the list. As far as the city map goes, my home was marked as unknown. I'm sure a lot of you did though what I did for the city, sent out that self-reporting system. I went down to my basement. I knew I had a lead service line. I took the pictures. I self-reported it back in 2024. My line was not on the list when they came through this year. We talked about this stuff. And this is where you all come in, grassroots, and why we are so important. Because we're underground, we know exactly what our communities need. We know how to solve the problems, and we can't keep doing what we've been doing for the last 50 years. If what was working for the last 50 years worked, we would not still be dealing with this issue today. So your voices matter. There was a time where I was just painted as the crazy lead lady that went and sat outside the mayor's office and refused to leave until he put me on his calendar. But now I've managed to assemble 3 legal teams. We've managed to hold the city's feet to the fire, whether it was passing the lead ordinance here in Syracuse around lead paint, helping to pass the state rental registry so that they can further enforce that ordinance, helping to make sure that water lines are getting replaced in a timely and proper fashion. Our voices matter, and when we pull together, all together, and put them on notice, we can all make a difference. So we have a new mayor now, and so we're taking a fresh start with Sharon. Sharon has committed to giving us a big table on lead in the same way she gave Urban Jobs Task Force a big table on I-81, and we were able to get that local 15% higher. The way Lanessa and I have been able to come to the community health and outreach table and get those protections around community health and safety, things that NYSDOT's never done before. Legally, they weren't obligated to do, but because of that community pressure, that is happening. We'll continue our dialogue. I'm going to let Vanessa bring you guys up to date on all the legal stuff and how we got to this point. Because it's been a lot in the past 2 years, but we are making progress.
So good afternoon. I'm going to talk about some of the legal steps that we've been taking since we learned about the flood water crisis. And also I'll discuss what Syracuse's legal obligations are, but I think that's important. I'm Lanessa Owens Chaplin. I'm the Director of the Racial Justice Center. I live in Syracuse. I'm a native of Syracuse, but I work across the state as part of my portfolio. We work on lead all across the state because it's a big problem. Fun fact, in 2017, New York State passed legislation that every municipality across the state had to get rid of their lead service lines by 2027. That was the goal in 2017. So we were actually ahead of the nation trying to resolve this lead issue. And for those who are wondering how did we get into this lead service line debacle, it was actually required most municipalities across the state to install lead service lines to connect them to your homes. This is before we really were knowledgeable about the damages of lead or understood how it can corrode over time. So for folks who say, oh, when I was a kid, I used to drink out of the hose, or when I was a kid, I could drink the water just fine. Well, the pipes were probably still in good condition when you were a kid, right? 50 years later, they are corroded and they are bringing lead into your faucets, into your drinking water. So that's why it's such an urgent issue. That's why in 2017, under Governor Cuomo, he dedicated $260 million to resolve this issue. And since then, even through Governor Hochul, we've been receiving about $110 to $160 million per year since 2017 to resolve this issue. So if you're wondering, well, why are we still having an issue? Well, in January 5th of 2026, the New York State Comptroller issued a report and did a total audit across the state to figure out what's going on. We at this point put in $500 million to this process, and there are still lead service lines all across New York State. Approximately a little bit over 500,000 lead service lines to be exact. And what he found is that each municipality is kind of mismanaging money. There is still money that hasn't been spent. We're just all over the place. So for example, some municipalities have spent like 48% of their funding on administrative fees and haven't placed a single lead service line. Places like Syracuse, New York, where we know for a fact there's 14,000 lead service lines and about 5,000 unknown service lines that haven't been identified yet. And between 2017 and now, we've only replaced 800. 800, a little over like 800. And up until 3 weeks ago, those 800, none of them were the 14,000 that we know for a fact are lead service lines. All 800 had been tested, and there was no lead coming out of the service line, because what the city of Syracuse did is they created a one dig rule, meaning if they're in your neighborhood and they're already kind of digging up your concrete, they'll replace your lead service line. So neighborhoods that we're invested in, that are highly resourced, that have a high homeowner rate, those are the houses that got replaced. So we looked at the map, a few of us, and so obviously I work in civil rights, so I'm always looking for discrimination. I'm kind of looking for it all the time. So we pull up the map and we look at all the lead service lines that have been replaced in Syracuse. Just a quick reminder, Syracuse is about 47% people of color. 100% of lead service lines were replaced in predominantly white neighborhoods in Syracuse, which is intentional, it's hard to find, right? And they were in wealthier neighborhoods. So we brought that to the attention of the mayor at the time, and we said, hey, these lead service lines seem to be being implemented, maybe not intentionally, right, but what we call disparate impact, right? The impact of your one dig rule is communities that need it the most, that we know for sure have lead service lines, are not getting the lead service line replaced. So that was kind of flag number one for us. That kind of got us involved with the situation. The July 2023 testing came out, and it was extraordinarily high. And it was so high, at some points it was 15% higher than what the EPA allows. We had 15 times higher, we had 12 times higher, we had 6 times higher. The height of Flint, Michigan was about 5 times higher. So it was extraordinarily high. And it was so high that we thought, now I'm not an environmental scientist, I'm a lawyer, I apologize for that. But we assume there's no way that we can have a testing that's 15 times, 12 times higher and it'd be but the numbers are just extremely too high. So what we did was Oceana kind of got all the legal teams together. We started putting out a bunch of FOILs, which are Freedom of Information laws, right? We started trying to get all the information we can. We foiled the New York State Department of Health. We foiled the Onondaga County Department of Health. We foiled the city of Syracuse. We wanted to know what they looked like over the past 2 years. And what we uncovered in our FOIL back in 2023 was that not only did the city of Syracuse know about the flood water crisis in 2023, but the records strongly indicated this had been going on for over a decade. And they had known about it. We had physical evidence that they knew about the flood water crisis. They knew how imminent it was, at least for 10 years. And that's the records that we requested, right? Because when you submit a FOIL, you want to kind of frame it out to 10 years. Anything less than that, or more than that, they take a million years to respond to. So you don't want to give them any excuses to not give you the information. So we kind of tailor it tightly. We hired a water quality expert, a national expert, cost a pretty penny between the organizations. We gave them the information. They also foiled for their own information and looked at available public records. And they confirmed what we thought. There had been a problem for the past decade, not only with the lead service lines, but also with the water main breaks and all the other things that happened with Syracuse water, that they were extremely concerned about it. And we drafted a report. We gave that information, our full response information, the report, all of our findings. As a legal team, we met with the EPA and we said, we think Syracuse has a real problem. And we think they've been covering it up for 10 years. And we gave them all of our information, met with the Attorney General's staff. And we said, hey, we think Syracuse has a real problem. We gave them all of our information and findings. We met with the city administration at the time. We said, hey, we think you guys have a real problem. We gave them all of our findings and information. They said, no, it's a fluke. All your findings, your air quality expert, all of your environmental experts, all your civil rights experts, this was a fluke. There was 2 employees that made a mistake. By the way, we discovered the 2 employees who made a mistake. It wasn't the city. It's because we canvassed and knocked on all the doors that homes were tested, and they told us how the homes were tested. And we knew that was a violation of what EPA was supposed to be doing. So we actually whistle blew on accident these poor employees that lost their jobs because they had tested the water wrong, because they had the wrong instructions from the director of the water department, not because they intentionally did something wrong. So this was happening, and we were still getting no traction. Now, it's kind of difficult under the legal framework to file litigation against the city of Syracuse under the Clean Water Act, because a part of the Clean Water Act says, as long as the city is doing something to remediate the issue, they are doing enough. And so once we flagged to the EPA, once we flagged to the AG's office there was a problem here, they launched their own investigation. It took them about 18 months to get back to us, but their investigation confirmed exactly what we said in our report 18 months earlier. And the frustrating part is, we've been telling you this with all of our expertise 18 months prior. You could have been getting point of use filters to people's homes. You could have been educating people for this 18 months, and you just sat on your hands. Now the EPA comes out with their independent investigation. They confirm what we say, and they make a bunch of recommendations, which I must say, in the Trump administration, it's very impressive. We weren't expecting much from them. But that report was damning. And I really encourage you to read the 2-page summary that we did on the report, because the report itself was pretty long. But it was damning. And it said that the Syracuse records were so inadequate and so basically incomplete, they couldn't make heads from tails. They couldn't tell where they complied, where they didn't comply, the information was missing. Some of the testing actually violated the law clearly. For example, you have to test 100 homes, snapshot, right? You test 100 homes, that gives you a snapshot of what the entire city looks like. Now, if that snapshot comes back problematic, which we know it did in 2023, you gotta wait 3 months, you go back and test those same exact 100 homes to make sure that it was in fact a fluke. They did not do that. What they did was they tested about 60 of the same exact 100 homes, 40 new homes, and then 44 newer homes. They tested 144 homes. Now, why is that a problem? Anybody?
New homes don't have lead lines.
Yeah,
New homes don't have lead lines. Not retesting 40 of the same homes dilutes the number. So the second testing that they were required to do fell just below what the EPA says is allowable. just below. I mean, it was like 11.7 EPA level, 12 parts per billion, right? So we, again, flagged the EPA, hey, we think they did faulty testing here, here's the evidence that we have. So the EPA came out with a really damning report that got buried. There was not a lot of media around it, most folks didn't hear about it, not really sure why Syracuse.com and others didn't pick up on it more. We would try to push that information up there. So as a legal team, our hands are kind of tied in what we can do legally. So what they did in response to the EPA's damning recommendations, which the EPA did fall short because they could have enforced it instead of making recommendations, but we did what we did. They made them create public education material. So one, they had to stop lying to the public because for that 18 months they kept committing to, this is just the flu, there's no problem here, everything's fine, drink your tap water, Skinny Ellis Lake is pristine. And every time we would talk to the reporters, they would make it like a he say, she say, right? Well, this coalition saying it's not okay, but the mayor said it is okay. And so we had the raw data, and they just would not put it in the news. So they had to one, stop lying to folks. So they had to send out a mailer that says, hey, your water might have lead in it. You should take some precautions, but there's no emergency here. They kept putting that in every mailer. You may have lead, but there's no emergency here. Two, they had to create a hotline, which means if you think you have a lead service line, or you want to know if you have a lead service line, you call this hotline. Ocean and I called it right in front of the AG's office and said it just rings and rings until it was busy. We felt so confident. We called it in the conference room. We'll call it right now. No one answers it ever. No one answered it. It just went busy. No answer machine, just went busy. And they also gave out water filters to any family that was under the age of, had a child who was the age of 6. And when I say that, I mean, gave away, they basically dumped a bunch of water filters at the Syracuse City School District. They told them to figure out a plan to give it away. That plan took 12 months to enforce. So some kids were getting their water filters in July at the end of summer school with no instructions. And the teachers who were giving them away said, I don't know why I'm giving this to you, but I just know I'm supposed to give this to you. So right, that's not public education. So we're still challenging them on how they're actually implementing the recommendations from the EPA. So that's why in the past 5 months since we've had Mayor Owens, I will say she has taken leaps and bounds. From the past 2.5 years, we've been struggling with the previous administration. And I get it, people are on their way out the door. They don't want to be known as the mayor who left the lead water crisis. It doesn't look good. And we got a lot of companies coming here. We got Micron coming here. We got this big boom, and no one wants to move somewhere where there's lead in their water. So I get why it's a PR nightmare, but we need to protect the residents. That's our number one priority, right? The public health is our number one priority. So we want to keep pressure on the mayor's office. We're asking folks to sign that petition to continue to keep pressure on them. We're still asking for the same things we've been asking for since 2023, is for the city to call for a state of emergency. We're asking for every single family should have a water filter. I know we want to protect our kids, but we also want to just protect everyone. And then we also want a real educational outreach program that teaches folks the signs and symptoms of lead poisoning and what that looks like. And just some fun facts for the city of Syracuse. 1 in 6 Black children are poisoned by lead. The rate is extraordinarily high for Black boys, and that's usually because the symptoms often look like behavioral problems, and so they get missed. So some of the symptoms in children are forgetfulness, impulse control, and not being able to stay seated. And so if a teacher starts to see this, they usually will get on an IEP or a 504 plan, but they don't test for lead. There's no requirement in New York State to test for lead past the age of 2. So oftentimes the educational piece is we should be in the schools teaching teachers what lead poisoning looks like in children. We should be teaching parents how to identify lead early. If you catch it early enough, right, you can treat it. There's still going to be damage, but it's not going to be detrimental and permanent damage for someone the rest of their life when you get full-blown lead poisoning, which is a neurological disorder forever. We have heard stories of kids who have lost their voice and never lost their voice at 7, 8 years old and now are, permanently have no voice. We don't want that. Across the state, about 10,000 people per year get lead poisoning. And so for 600 of them to come from little tiny Syracuse, right next to New York City, that has 5 million people, that really says a lot. I don't know if there's any questions for me and Oceana, but.
They have some time.
Okay, I'll pass it over.
I'm gonna say before I forget, these standards that they give the city to meet are testing standards, and there's a huge difference between testing standards and health standards.
So the health standard is 0. There is no reason for lead to be in our body, and even in the smallest amounts, especially for children under the age of 6, it is extremely damaging. These children lose IQ points at school. They can grow up to have lower, most kids, if they have lead poisoning, probably won't graduate. This is gonna lower their earning potential. We tend to see them have other chronic illnesses much early, such as kidney disease, strokes, high blood pressure, heart disease. These things can affect them for lifelong. So there's no reason to ever have lead in our system. But these testing standards, the government gives to municipalities because they just can't come in and say, Syracuse, tomorrow, you can't have any lead in the water. It's not an attainable goal. They wouldn't reach it. So they're lowering it. And I know that our water commissioner is going around bragging right now that we are passing our lead in water. But as of January, if nothing changes, we will fail. We will be failing again because the new lead and copper rule takes place, and they are bringing down that testing requirement every year. So the goal is 0. So that's important to understand.
I just want to commend you for that. 36 years ago, I did a blood test. I live in the times now about 110 years old, and get very high levels. And so our expense, we had our pipes through the street changed because the lead was leaching into the water, and we had it changed. And I'm a clinical psychologist, and I went to Mayor, then it was Lee Alexander. This is like long, probably before both of you were born. And
I've heard
story. Mayor, I went to press, I went to my pediatrician, and I made the biggest stink I could about the fact that we had high levels of lead in the water. And being a clinical psychologist, I knew what the impact was on a developing brain. So I'm just telling you, this is not 10 years old. This is something that has been going on for 36 years. 36 years and longer. So I really commend you. I hope you get this done. And as I said, I was a single individual at the time. I did the best I could. I went on TV. I was on TV a lot. I went to the mayor's office. I did everything. But as an individual, I did, reach out, and I didn't get very much support. And my son was okay because we had our expense. We did change, but it was expensive. And so I do commend you, and I hope you're successful because it does. And I volunteer in the city schools, and I can see the impact on the children. You can see it. You can see it. So I really commend you. I hope you get it.
That's a great point, and it reminds me that right now, New York State legislators, we've been working on a bill all year, the Lead Pipe Replacement Act. For the Assembly, it's 7878A, 7878A. If you want to call your Assembly member to pass that bill, that would be really helpful. I'm going to send it side. I think it's 6952, but don't quote me. Go to the I better put numbers on that side. But basically, what that bill does is it requires New York State to replace all its lead. So we're taking it out of the hands of local municipalities and putting it in the hands of the state, which we hope things will create a more uniformed replacement plan. And some of the good parts of the bill, we met with all the mayors across the state once that council report came out. And what we heard is like one of the main barriers to being able to replace the lead service line at no direct cost to the homeowner. That's what we wanted to make sure that the state is covering that cost especially for folks who are renters, because there's no incentive at all for a landlord to replace a lead service line. So it would be at no cost to the homeowners. We know that Governor Hochul has $3.7 billion in the budget right now for water infrastructure. Some of that money is going to be carved out for lead service line replacement. But the bill prioritizes communities that we know are inundated with lead. So it prioritizes vulnerable communities. It also prioritizes neighborhoods that have in-home daycare and child care centers, which I think is really important. And it allows tenants to consent to getting their lead water pipes replaced. So utility companies can access the home replace the lead service lines in the event that just an absentee landlord or the landlord just doesn't respond to the request from the state. So if you want to call your local assembly member and have them pass that bill, this is the last week that we can get anything passed. It's in a really good spot right now, but we need any kind of push.
You did say 78, 78.
78A.
And what was the amount that the city had already allocated? There were two numerical values you gave us. It was millions of dollars had already been earmarked for this process that you said were mismanaged, correct?
Across, yes. So
and that was the city, wasn't it?
That was all of it. So that audit was for the entire state of New York. Syracuse had spent about 7% of its funding since 2017. So we haven't mismanaged more than we just underspent. Some other states, like Albany, I'll put them on blast. They spent 48% of the funding on administrative.
Okay.
But in Syracuse, we spent about 7% of our funding
on administrative fees.
On replacement of that service. But we,
okay.
Yeah.
So that money's still there.
Mm-hmm. Right. This is not an unfunded. It's not a funding problem. Despite what folks want to tell you, it's not a funding problem.
Hi. Sorry. I just want to second what this woman said. When I started my career in healthcare in the early 1990s, I worked with Upstate Lead Clinic. This is not a new problem. This has been known since I was a teenager. When Sharon Owens came and addressed our group, she had said that the funding was there, but that the service providers to do the work were not available, that there were limited service providers. So one, I'd like to know if that's true. Second of all, I grew up in the city. I no longer live in the city, but I have family who live there and family who are rental owners as well. So how do we find out, like how can I get them to sign a petition? How do we find out if our residences are in areas that have been tested or not tested?
Okay, so let me address the problem with service providers. So this is one of the reasons we are asking for the outreach and education program. We're also asking for a workforce training program. We've seen it work with I-81. We've pretty much met that 15 local % higher on 81. We also know that the city of Newark did exactly that. They trained their residents who are unemployed to help replace service lines. Yes, there is a certain amount of work that has to be done by the certified plumber. And that's more towards the end of the project, but opening the ground and closing the ground, we can train folks to go do that. And now we have Governor Hochul's pet project literally sitting in our city under the name of OnRamp. It was set up just to do that type of training. And we're not the only ones that need this work done. So once we train our residents to do this work, they can then go on and help Rochester and Buffalo and everyone else who's going to have to get this done. Because as of January, it will be the law of the land federally.
So are you working with plumbing unions? Are you working with businesses downtown city district?
So like I said, in the last 5 months, we've had much more movement than we have in the past 2 years. And something that Mayor Owens has promised us, she's going to create a big table. And if you're not familiar with the term big table, it just means getting all the appropriate stakeholders at one meeting and start having a larger conversation about how we're all going to tackle this. Something we found very successful in other major campaigns. We get all the stakeholders, the plumbers union, smaller organizations, job search organizations, workforce development. We want to get everyone at the table so we can all start working together and hopefully having pressure from the feds and the state will do that. I want to ask your question about the petition. We do have an online petition that we can send you the link to. If you give this your contact information, or maybe we'll send it out in the newsletter. We can have this. Or the Discord. We have an online petition. You can send the link over to folks and they can just sign it that way.
All right, so I know that we are about time, so I just want to thank these two wonderful leaders for coming out here, for the emotional toll that they take every single day, trying to tackle this issue for their communities, for their families. So I just want to acknowledge that it takes a lot of bravery, and I just want to say that I'm very humbled to be working with both of you, and It's not an easy job, but they do it so well. They make it look so easy. So if you have not signed the petition and you live in the city, please come see me so you can sign it. In the back of the 2-pager, it has some instructions on what you can do to call your representatives. If you do not know who your representatives are, you can Google this. There is a website in which you can put your zip code and it will take you to who your representative is. Okay. Anybody can sign the petition. Vanessa just corrected me. Even if you do not live in the city, come talk to me. Support the city and come sign it. Yes, Chris.
When you say the representative, you mean your member of the common council?
No, you're a state assembly member or senator.
Oh. State representative for the lead pipe replacement act.
For the lead pipe replacement. For the lead pipe replacement act, yes. All right, thank you, everybody.
Okay, we are going to move to our breakout sessions. If you want to hear more about the lead problem and specifically what you can do, hang out here. They're going to stay for a little while and answer questions and tell you how you can get plugged into that. If you are new here for the first time, pick a committee to visit. I'll be over here for a few minutes. You have a couple questions about where to go. Committees. Beyond War and Militarism, classroom back here. Climate Justice, classroom here. Upstairs, we have State Legislative Action Team and Electrical. We have our protest team. We have our outreach team. All meeting in the classrooms upstairs. Signs are on the doors. Have a good afternoon. We'll see you next week for our candidate.